6 children in state care deeply shocked many citizens. The report's conclusions were a serious indictment of child protection systems and made clear that the state had abdicated its duty in respect of some young people and failed to provide adequate child protection support. Now, Taoiseach, you will recall that key recommendations of the report included independent reviews into the deaths of 10 children and for aftercare to be put on a statutory footing. 3 years later, Taoiseach, only one of these recommendations has been implemented. The result is that some young people in the state care are being left now without adequate support when they turn 18. These young people are being exposed to exploitation and violence. And when the report of the Independent Child Death Review Group was first published, you said that it detailed a litany of shame. The then Minister for Children described it as harrowing and promised that an implementation plan would be developed. It never was, Taoiseach. Isn't it the government's failure over the course of 3 years to implement the findings of this most shocking report an indictment of the government's record of protecting the most vulnerable of our young citizens who are in care of the state?
Well, as you know, the government and the Minister for Children have set up the child agency TUSLA, which is very well funded. The Minister is acutely aware of the nature of the difficulties and the challenges that face many children who are in difficult and vulnerable positions. Clearly, this is an issue that he has worked on and is preparing in respect of the discussions that will take place prior to the budget in October. I accept that the litany of all of the issues that were raised in that report have not been implemented. That's why Minister has prepared his report following that, and hopefully the discussions that he will have now over the next period ahead will lead to some improvement in that situation, which I agree is not satisfactory.
Deputy Adams.
Well, TUSLA, as you say, was established to improve children's services, and you say that it's well funded. TUSLA recently cut funding to rape crisis and women's centres and said that part of its problem was it didn't have the funding. Now, today's Irish Times reports a HIQA review, and I've read the executive summary of this review. It's an overview of inspections last year. Now, this is an overview of TUSLA, and it found inconsistencies in the safety and quality of children's services and said that this caused major concern. HIQA found significant delays in assessing the needs of children and families where there were reports of suspected abuse or neglect. There was evidence that children at risk of harm did not have timely access to social workers or vital supports, and others who are dealing with children, including teachers, have told me they have the same difficulty getting timely access to social workers or getting the vital supports. HIQA says, and you should read the report, Taoiseach, or at least the executive summary of it, that it's concerned that management systems may not be adequate to provide consistently safe services. HIQA says that the management systems in TUSLA may not be adequate to provide consistently safe services. Some services cannot meet the needs of children with challenging behaviour, and as a result, HIQA is to commence a review of TUSLA's governance arrangements in 2015, and I very much welcome this. The question, Taoiseach, is what is the government doing? You have failed, and you didn't respond to this in your answer to my first question. You have failed to implement key recommendations of the Independent Child Death Review in 2012, and now HIQA is so concerned about governance arrangements in TUSLA, the very body that was set up following the scandal of the deaths of so many young people in care. TUSLA is so concerned that it's to commence a review of these arrangements. So, Taoiseach, doesn't this call into question your government's child service strategy, including the funding of services? And would you not recognise this as a crisis and explain how you propose to deal with this crisis?
Well, as you're aware, Deputy, the Independent Child Death Review Group was set up back in March of 2010 following the death of 2 children. And as you're aware, it did make 25 recommendations. Obviously, it's the intention of government to see that those are implemented. As in the first instance, TUSLA, the Dedicated Child and Family Agency, has been established. It's chaired by one of the authors of the report, as you know. And some key reforms that are being implemented as part of that work include the National Service Delivery Framework and national policy guidelines across a range of areas like welfare and protection and alternative care, development of the Child Protection Notification System to secure that the safety of children at risk from harm by improving communication and information being shared, the much greater emphasis on early intervention and prevention, work through the rollout of the MEHEL model and the Prevention Partnership and Family Support Programme, a dedicated aftercare service to standardise the delivery of leaving and aftercare services. And as promised, the Children First Bill was published. It was recently strengthened and clarified in regard to some of the recommendations therein, and is currently before the Oireachtas being debated, as you're aware. A bill to provide a statutory right to an aftercare plan is currently being drafted and will be published shortly. Since the publication of the review group's report, HIQA has continued its work in reviewing both fostering and child protection and welfare services, supporting the aim of continually improving those. And finally, following the publication of the review group's report, the national panel process for the review of child deaths has been greatly strengthened. Guidance for the national panel review was revised and published last year, and HIQA now has a very specific oversight role in auditing the independence of that panel, and the panel reports directly to the board of TUSLA under the new arrangements. These are some of the areas of work that is currently underway following that, Deputy Adams.
Deputy Murphy.